Welcome to Kick 'Em in the Head, a podcast that takes an inside look at the world of mixed martial arts, featuring interviews with some of the top fighters from South Africa and around the world, with a focus on the EFC and UFC promotions. I'm your host, Yaw. Join us as we delve deep into the techniques, strategies, and mindsets of these world-class athletes, learning from their experiences and gaining insights into what it takes to succeed in the toughest sport on earth. Welcome back to the Kick 'Em in the Head podcast. As always, we have an absolutely jam-packed podcast. With me today again is one of the biggest UFC fans I know, Lusindiso. Lou, welcome to the Kick 'Em in the Head podcast.
Again. Always a pleasure, brother. Always a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now, I think this is your first time doing a full show with us, and I'm very excited. Last time we did a picks show, which we will go into later in this episode. Yes. But how have you been?
Good. Exciting times. I read a headline. I don't know if it's accurate, but someone was saying, it's almost like one of those memes where it shows a UFC fan excited, and it was saying, UFC fans are excited because there's going to be fights for the next 7 weeks or something to that extent.
11 weeks.
11, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's obviously got us excited. So looking forward to an action-packed couple of weeks.
Before we look forward, let's look backwards and let's talk about UFC Vegas 85. How did you find that fight night? I think based on, honestly, the lack of familiar names on the card, to be honest, and the lack of hype on social media, it wasn't the worst fight night. There were some sleeper fights in there, I think, for me. How did you find that fight night?
Look, we must also maybe just take a step back and understand what UFC Vegas is. I mean, it was initially a solution to, COVID. And so, it was exciting when it first came through because that was the only platform that you could see fights. Then once COVID kind of went away, Dana used the platform to collaborate with ESPN as well as to kind of get more people into these fights without paying so much, in terms of the production costs. So it's not always going to be, bang fights and like exciting fights, and it's a platform for fighters to put themselves from the B grade to the A grade. So sometimes you are going to get misses. Dana and the guys get fights right a lot of the times, and sometimes it's not going to be right. And I guess that's the nature of the game. This one specifically, I mean, there were a couple of good fights, a couple of surprises. But, generally it wasn't the greatest Vegas card, in terms of entertainment, in terms of what was required from a card. But I think it did what it needed to do because it put certain people in certain places for them to kind of, again, carve their way into where they want to go and to kind of write their own destiny in the UFC.
I know you said not exciting, but we had a 30-second knockout by the one and only answer, Themba Gorimbo, which honestly for me was, I would say, the highlight of the night, because a 30-second knockout is not something that you see very often. And with what he said before the fight in terms of how he was going to be coming out, how he intended to approach the fight, for him to do it in 30 seconds, even the commentators were awestruck. DC, he was like, oh, listen, how do you... I mean, for me, yes, it wasn't that exciting, but one fight that we went split on as well was the ladies' fight, Araujo, Vivian, versus Silva. And once again, Silva's current form showed. She absolutely bulldozed Araujo. It was a very, very good 3-minute fight. Sorry, 15-minute fight, full fight. But I do agree with you. The rest, not so much. Although the one fight we must talk about is the co-main. Dover. And if any, the post-fight interview by Moicano.
Yeah. Look, I mean, as you say, Themba was my mind, fight of the night, just because of how we went about it. We did say this in the preview show, in the prediction show, that he's hungry and he wants to get that dub, and in emphatic fashion. He wants to make a name for himself. He wants to kind of carve his way into the UFC and make his name kind of well known, especially with the background with The Rock. And he did just that. Beautiful performance, did everything right. Imposed himself, showed who he is, and showed he's the better fighter. And obviously everything around that, the reading of the note and why he wants to do it, and it's always going to be pulling at the heartstrings, those sort of things, because we know what kind of man he is. What's not to love about Themba? The performance was great. The pre and post interviews was great. He stole the show, definitely.
And the ladies' fight, which other fight stood out for you? I think, honestly, Brown Salikov was another one that stood out for me, because we both wrote off Randy Brown. We looked at his pedigree and we said, listen, yeah, he's fought Bilal and the rest, and he's got a good history, but what's he really going to do? And he showed us what he does. And he absolutely bulldozed Salikov in a way that, honestly, I don't think any of us expected a knockout that quick.
Yeah, it was. Look, it's a fight, so that's the thing about fighting. It can go any way, because it's a fight. That's the nature of the sport, But you tend to put, I don't know, certain pros and cons, and you think something should come out a certain way. I don't want to not give Randy Brown the credit. Perhaps something from Salikov that I haven't seen anything in the presser to talk, about Salikov. And, fighters, good fighters never make excuses about their losses. They take their losses and, on the chin and go back to the gym. But again, credit to Randy Brown. He did it in emphatic fashion. Round one, very, very quick as well. Not as quick as Themba, yes, but, emphatic, great performance. And, it's always good to see, Randy Brown is one of those guys who's also trying to build a name for himself. So, it works out for him, and hopefully he continues to surge forward.
And then the co-main event, Renato Moicano versus Drew Dober, went the distance. Best crotch sniffer, as some of the casuals would say, in terms of how the match went, but reference to Moicano, obviously. But I think he really ground out the win that he needed to, because, as we said, you can't stand and bang with Drew Dober. If he catches you on the chin, it's over. Ooh, that rhymed. Yeah. So I think Renato Moicano definitely recognized that, and he kept it on the ground and got the decision win.
Yeah, man. Very impressive from him to grind it out. What was super surprising for me is I don't know if you caught, the post, just before they announced the decision. Drew Dober came into that octagon weighing 180 pounds. That is mad. So it actually just talks about, the cut is hectic for Drew Dober. But to come into the ring and fighting, you're a 155, and maybe you get up to 160, 162, call it, on fight night. But Drew Dober was 180 pounds. So it just makes it all the more impressive for Moicano to be fighting, someone that's close to a middleweight. Like, it's crazy. So, that gives more credit for me to Moicano for grinding out a, underweight, middleweight, as a lightweight to win that fight. It's incredible.
And I think it was capped off by his post-fight interview, of which we all found out that his 62-year-old father is having a newborn baby, and so therefore he wants more money so he can also go and have more babies, which, as we've talked about, speaking and being good on the mic is something that you need as a fighter in order to get the fights you want. And he is clearly following that and making sure that he is known on the mic. Money Moicano.
Yeah, man. it's quite amazing. I know we're talking MMA, but it almost reminds me of Drake and his father. The guys who like father like son who are always just going to be cool. The dad is cool, Moicano's cool as well, and he's kind of just doing his thing and really just carving a path for himself, Moicano. And again, as you say, the guys who've got the gift of the gab, will always find a way to make the headlines. But obviously there are some guys who trash talk and in a weird way. But Moicano's found the balance between being like loved regardless of what he says. It's the weirdest thing, but it just works for him. Maybe it's just his personality, maybe it's just who he is, and that person just shines through. And we wish him well. We all love him, as we said even in the previews. We all love Moicano, and we want him to make the money. We want him the big money fights. Remember, he called out Conormcgregor at some point in his life.
Everyone's called out Conormcgregor.
You know what I mean? The red painting night. Look, I think well deserved again, just because of fighting someone who's just way bigger than him, and hopefully he can go from strength to strength.
I agree, and he shouted out MMA Guru, where he called him out after the fight. Shout out MMA Guru, by the way. Everyone hates and loves him all over the internet, MMA Twitter. But then the main fight, Dolidze versus Imanov, and from the description of the fight and how it went, he's been called one of the dirtiest fighters, Imanov, who came through with the win on decision.
Weird one for me, again, maybe it's because, I wouldn't say I'm a sore loser, but like I thought I got that one right. I thought I would have got that one right. Especially just Dolidze's record and just how he went about everything, man. But again, credit to Imanov. Despite with these things, you've got to give credit to the fighter. He did what he needed to do, and that's the thing about fighting. We'll have you think about a John Jones record, for example. There's so many controversials and like so many what ifs and so many, but when you look at the record is clean. It's when yes, if you really want to pick, you'll remember certain aspects of the record. But again, a dub is a dub. And that's the thing about the sport. Guys are fighting for money. They put a lot of work to get, I'm going to say, not a lot of money, despite what people think. So Imanov did what he needed to do to get that check, and credit to him.
Fight to pay is a discussion we shall have on another day, because everyone talks about fight to pay, and I talked about it recently on another podcast. Shout out week show, Ola. And my view is different, but we'll go into that some other time. I think let's go into the picks. Let's see who got the most picks right. Let's see who should be a World Sport Betting pro. Shout out World Sport Betting. Please give us a sponsorship. And with regards to the picks, so taking it from the top, let's see who got the most. Imanov Dolidze, I got that one. Imanov, one for me.
Yep.
Moicano Dober, another one for me.
You got that one. Yeah.
Salikov Brown, we both flopped there.
I'm not good at this.
Silva Rahul, another one for me. That's 3. Kisrev Muradov, that was a no contest. Ubina Radka, that's 4. So I got 4 out of the 5 or so. Ooh, not bad, not bad. I missed 1. And no contest.
Clean me out. You cleaned me out.
Completely. And then in the prelims, McCann Belbita, that's 1 for you.
Yeah.
Matsum Johnson, we both didn't get. Gorimbo Rodriguez, that's 1 for me, so that's 5. Lee Builder, that's 6 for me.
I think we both went Themba on that one, didn't we?
Yes, we did. And Lee Builder, we both went Lee, so we both lost there.
Yeah.
So that's 5. And then Karolina Sterlenko, I got that one, so that's 6 for me.
Yeah, you got that one. Yeah.
Murderos versus Quinos, you got that one.
Yeah.
And then the first fight, I didn't get that one. We didn't get that one.
Yeah, we both didn't get it.
So I got 6 on the night. How about you?
I'm too embarrassed to even say it. I'm going to take my L, put my tail between my legs, and move right along.
Okay. We're happy with that. We're happy with that.
But like it's 3. Like I mean, it's not good enough. But we'll get there.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Congratulations. Let me give you your flowers. Congratulations.
We'll see how I do this coming week with the upcoming fight night. But we're literally going to that now. How about the upcoming fight night? We have Hermansson versus Pyfer. Obviously, Hermansson's an older fighter. We haven't seen him in a while. He's had some battles in the past, I think, with John Jones and a few other legendary fighters. And now he's back in the octagon to take on Joe Pyfer. How are you feeling about this middleweight bout, especially with what's been happening in the middleweight division with 4 champions in the last 14 months in the middleweight division? Currently with the title is Dricus still Knox Du Plessis. How are we feeling about this fight night? How are we feeling about this main event?
Look, as you say, Jack's done his fair share of UFC fights, and he had put himself in a place of contention at some point in his career. But as the rankings show, he's now kind of 11th, is it? So he's slipped down, and he's looking, as fighters do. You never give up on yourself, and you always want to back yourself. And he's probably looking to show that he still got it. He still has the skill sets to be able to hold out and to almost kind of be a main event as he is now. However, we've got a Joe Pyfer who's hungry, who's looking to put a number against his name, and Jack Hermansson has to prove that he's worthy of not only being a fighter in the top 15 of that middleweight, but he has potential to continue a surging comeback where he'll perhaps go for another run at the title, like every fighter does. Fighters don't go into fights to not win. So it's an interesting bout in the sense that Joe Pyfer is a guy that's again looking to make a name for himself. Athletic, I think, is a boxer, if I recall. So he's looking to make a name for himself, and if he does what he needs to do, he gets a big name, because of Jack's resume, and 2, most importantly for him, he gets a number next to his name.
So with this fight, I think, like you said earlier, it's the apex. It's a fighter who's probably in the twilight of his career versus a fighter who's looking to show his skills. Because if you look at Pyfer's recent wins, it's not against the biggest names. Although I must say he did beat my fellow countryman Al Hassan, the fellow Ghanaian, in his last fight. So well done to him. But let's see how well he can do in this fight against a potential, maybe we'll see, I won't say Hall of Famer, but definitely one of the greats in the modern UFC era. The next fight, Dan Ige. How are you feeling about this fight? We haven't seen Dan in a while. Everyone used to call out Dan, especially in the flyweight division, Kai Kara France, etc. But he's kind of dropped off recently in terms of his popularity. So I think bringing him back to the apex gives him a chance to show, like you said, who he is, and the fact that he is a fighter that should still be maybe even the prelims of a PPV. How are you feeling about the second fight on the card?
I mean, Dan Ige's skill set is right up there. He's definitely one of the best boxers. Look, I mean, there's always been an argument about, who the best boxer in the UFC is, and you know how that argument goes. With Holloway and McConnell always having something to say about that. But he comes from the same camp as, why am I forgetting this guy's name? Calvin Kattar. He's in Calvin Kattar's camp. And that's a striker's camp. That's a boxer's camp. Clean, beautiful movement. Everything comes up and down and from where it's supposed to. It's a beautiful fight. Is a beautiful fighter to watch. Danny. I love his technique. I love how he goes about his business. I mean, he even called himself 50K, if I recall. I don't know if he still has that nickname, because he was of the opinion that he's going to get the bonuses because of his fighting style. And it really is an entertaining fighting style. I really love how he goes about it. He's just been unfortunate, I think, in my mind, just not getting some dubs, some crucial dubs to take him to the next level. And I'm hoping he comes back, refreshed and having taken some lessons from those L's to get this win. But Andre Fili he's also a very good fighter. Again, if I recall, I haven't watched his fights, but he's also quite an entertaining fighter. So this potentially, has potential to be fighter of the night just because of how these guys fight. So I am making this fight to be an entertaining fight. But I'm going to go with my man 50K, man. He's been good, and I'm hoping that he has a comeback.
Let's hope he has a comeback against Philly. We'll see. But just one more fight I want to shout out to Bolaji Oki, who's fighting against Timothy Kwamba. Bolaji, shout out to you. We're followers on Instagram, mutuals. Good luck for your fight. And we hope that you really kick ass in that one. Now, that's it for Hermansson versus Pyfer Fight Night, which I'm looking forward to specifically because of Bolaji. But now it's time for my favorite part of the show. You don't know what it is because it's your first time.
Let's go. I'm surprised.
The fighter of the week.
It's time.
So, fighter of the week, as anyone who's watched the show knows before, we basically say who our favorite fighter of the week is and give them kudos, give them their flowers, let people know who they are and why they should know them. So, being your first time, I shall let you go first. Who is your fighter of the week, Lusindiso?
I think it's very, very obvious. But just in case people don't know, I almost want to do a drum roll. That's how excited I am about it.
We'll make sure that we have it in the next one.
Yeah. Themba Gorimbo, man. Super exciting fight. Again, just the performance, just the build up, to the story, who he is, the human being that he is. I talk about mixed martial arts and I talk about how the sport, can positively affect a human being in all aspects of his life. And, being the human being that he is, the sport really has just heightened his sense of how good he is as a human being. And he's just going to go from strength to strength in the things that he's doing. We're talking about it earlier before we started about how, he had a water project that he put together for, for his people, back in his country, and now, I hear that he's about to build a library, in Zim again from the fighter winnings that he got from his incredible performance. So that the kids can kind of further their educations. So it's a man who's always paying it forward, who's always grateful, who's always humble, but is a beast in the cage. Works hard, puts on an incredible performance, says everything the right way, says the right things, and for me, that's why he's the fighter of the week.
Phenomenal. I think definitely Themba deserves those kudos for everything that he's done so far with his MMA career. And we actually we will be having a chat about him later on in the show. But my fight of the week is a complete outsider, and he hasn't fought in a while, but he will be fighting soon. It's an up-and-coming prospect who's going pro. It's Ntando the Zulu Warrior Zombie. Now, he's my fighter of the week, and as you can see there, he's with the current middleweight champion, Dricus du Plessis, still knocks. He's my favorite fighter simply because of the work ethic that this kid's been putting in over the past year. We've been following him since he got his first Headkick win at Versus Fight Night last year. And we've recently been watching him and his training and seeing him go from amateur to pro, which he is now. at Team CIT. So he's my fight of the week because we just see an amazing career for him, and we're looking forward to all the events of the EFC. I think that's the promotion, the pro promotion he's going into, working with people like Dricus du Plessis, Coach Mone Fisser, Stefan DQ, all the guys at CIT. Phenomenal fighter. So for me, he's my fight of the week just because of the work ethic he's been putting in recently and everything he's been doing to further his career in the past 2-3 months.
Yeah, man, it's easy to agree with that. So easy to agree with that.
You don't know him, you're gonna know him. Don't worry about that. Follow him on all socials and Zulu Warrior Zondi.
It's so easy to agree with that. It's such a beautiful pick as well. They say in life you got to surround yourselves with people that you look up to and that'll drive you to be better. And the Zulu Warrior has done just that. He's in a great camp. The camp now is on an all-time high. With Dricus, being the UFC champ, and they've got. I mean, again, having a UFC champ in your gym is a once in a multi-lifetime opportunity, to learn from the best, literally the best in the world. And so, it's the future's there for him to carve, and to make a name for himself. We wish him well. As you say, it's the work ethic, but also the human being, the human being, you talk about, and for me, that I always have a soft spot for the human beings who put in the work, and hopefully, he has a great pro career. Wishing him all the best.
All the best, definitely. And now, speaking of all the best, we're going to go into one specific headline that's come up recently, which is not entirely MMA related, but the injury to Tyson Fury, the Gypsy King, has been injured in training. He got a massive cut over his eye, and he's now out of his fight with Alexander Usyk. Now, why are we talking about that? Because the former UFC heavyweight champion of the world, Francis the Predator Ngannou, has said that his bout between Anthony Joshua should now be for the either heavyweight contender match or for the actual title itself. Wow. From MMA to now being able to call for a heavyweight boxing title. Is this not what Ngannou was saying he wanted to achieve whilst being at the UFC, which possibly he would have been able to? What are your thoughts about the fact that this is where he has reached now within, call it, a year and a half of having fumbled the bag, as so many were saying when he left the UFC?
Man, what a beautiful story. I have all the time to talk about Francis Ngannou, just because of it's a phenomenal story of how he got to where he is. And he's only just starting. This is the thing, we think that people thought he reached the top, by being a UFC heavyweight champion, and, the dream has come true, and, he's gonna, and this is it. This is his apex. But he, knowing who he is and knowing what he wanted, was not satisfied because he had a vision and knew where he wanted to go. And he's achieved it in such a short space of time. Incredible story. And he's going to just go from strength to strength. He's earned the right. I always say this to you, Yaw, when we chat every now and again about people doing the work to earn the seat at the table. Look, it's one fight, but it's one fight against the Gypsy King, arguably one of the best heavyweight boxers we've seen in this era. So yeah, I mean, he's an elite boxer. He's got extreme skill. I'm talking about the Gypsy King now. And he's been able to show how he can put away guys like Deontay Wilder, who've been boxing all of their lives. And yet when it came to Francis Ngannou, showed his skill set and did the job, man, did the work that he needed to do to get himself the dub. We know he won the fight. It's like we all know it, but, boxing could not afford that rip. And so he's earned the right. And, with these sort of things, man, you've got to take the opportunities when they come and be quick to jump onto them. And I agree with Francis calling for the shot. Will he get it? Probably not. But I like his attitude about how he's going about his business in the boxing world, how he's putting himself in the conversations, how people will back that legitimacy. Yes, he may not get it, but more he's building a great fan base from boxing by, being in the right place, saying the right things, doing the right things. So, when you come into his fight now with AJ, AJ is a good opponent for him. I think from a skill set perspective, AJ is right up there as well. We haven't seen AJ with a big fighter in a long time. So this is an opportunity for AJ to kind of, sweep Francis under the rug and, kind of delegitimize this boxing fantasy that people are talking about with Francis Ngannou. But Francis Ngannou is here to make a name for himself. And I think he'll improve and he'll put on a better performance. The thing is with fighting, the element of surprise, obviously, was to his advantage when he fought, the Gypsy King, but now people understand and will take him seriously. So there's obviously a bit more risk on that. Tough fight to call. My heart says Francis, but AJ may probably get the job done just from an experience perspective. It's a weird one. Heavyweight fights are very difficult to call because one punch from Francis Ngannou and his headlines are all over the world. That's the thing. But from a movement perspective, AJ is not who he used to be, man. That's the other thing. He's not who he used to be. It's a tough one to call.
We'll see how that one goes. But I think bringing it back home, there's a few things we want to talk about now. So we just talked about Ngannou, and we know what he's doing in the African context. But bringing it back home to South Africa, Ace Fighting Championship 2 is happening this coming weekend, 10th of February. So anyone who's listening to this tomorrow, listening to this, and it's not yet the 10th of February, definitely get your tickets. It's going to be an amazing fight day. Essentially, it's a multi-dimensional combat sports promotion that looks at MMA, Muay Thai, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, and brings all of your combat sports into one place for the practitioners to verse each other, for there to be competition. Because I think in terms of there being a single promotion like that, there's pretty much only one. And that pun is very well intended because one championship is one of the only few other multi-disciplinary, multi-dimensional combat sports organizations out there. So to see one that's forming here in Africa is phenomenal. It's headed up by Themba, and the work that they've been doing over the past few months to make sure that Ace is ready for the crowds, Ace is ready for the fighters, Ace is ready for the press is phenomenal. They've had a few press days where they've sat down with the fighters, they've talked to the fighters, they've had the fighters meet each other prior to the fights, and it's definitely giving the right sort of air to the fights to say, this is a combat sport. We're here, it's sports, we're versing each other, let's engage. And I think it's definitely putting the shine that we want to put onto MMA in South Africa and onto combat sports as a whole in South Africa. Whereas previously, if it wasn't one of your traditional codes like karate, jiu-jitsu, not even jiu-jitsu, karate, taekwondo, or one of those, it wasn't really viewed very seriously. So I think Ace is also doing a good job, along with the Versus promotion and EFC locally in South Africa, MFC out in Durban, of really bringing together the MMA and combat sports society, industry, and communities in South Africa, and then taking us to the world, which is what we all want to do, is be taken to the world. Now, with that, someone who was taken to the world coming through an organization, specifically the EFC, was Themba Gorimbo. And now he's clearly the highlight of this show. If you look at the word blurb on this transcript, it'll be Themba Gorimbo everywhere, the answer. But he's been doing amazing work in his hometown back in Zimbabwe with his earnings. I know you're very passionate about that. Tell us more about what Themba's doing with his fame right now and all the success in MMA.
I mean, maybe first of all, maybe just before we jump onto Themba, man, I'm quite interested in what you've just talked about in terms of the Age Fighting Championship, as well as the versus. Just, you know, from a person who's just passionate about MMA and combat sport, I think as a whole, it's an opportune time, you know, especially with people now, you know, people who never knew what the sport is. Drickus has brought such a spotlight to combat sport. You know, we understand South Africa had a huge base and a following with boxing. You know, we've had a couple of champions that have made it to the world stage. You know, but what Drickus has done is really shine the light on combat sport, MMA specifically. And so it's an opportune time for a promotion to be in existence in this country. South Africa have just solidified themselves as a bunch of winners in all sorts of aspects. You know, so we are looking for platforms for you know, human beings, for fighters to express themselves, to groom themselves, and to get into places where they can get fight experience and get diverse fight experience. And so, you know, guys like Ace Fighting Championship, who are bringing, you know, a different flavor, you know, to the fight, you know, world, to the combat sport world via the multidisciplinary institution, is nothing but a good thing for South African sport. We wish them all the best of luck, and we hope that they just continue to soar and do everything that they need to do to be a formidable promotion in South Africa. Kudos to everybody who's involved, and all the best to the fighters, and really hoping something great just continues to surge higher and higher from that. Back to your question about Themba. I mean, obviously we talked about Themba in because he just fought, so we just had a conversation about him. But you know, again, you know, special human being, literally, you know, home is where the heart is with Themba, because he continues to just do so much for his country. And you know, this project where he's building a library, a solar powered library where, you know, kids will be able to study at night as well, you know, is just exemplary. He's just going to just grow from strength to strength. He's going to, I just wish we were in the UFC where you could pull in sponsors, you know, the olden days with UFC where you could pull in sponsors. He's prime right now to pull in, you know, some good sponsors because of the story. And we're hoping that despite, you know, where the UFC is with these things, that, you know, he can find several platforms to try, you know, get these sponsorships, because we know where that money is going to go. It's not going to go, you know, towards himself. He's going to go and do things for other people in his country. So we just wish him all the best, and we want him to really just go higher and higher. We want him to book him for UFC 300. Book him.
Against
Book
who?
him.
Against who?
Book him. Say again?
Against who? Because that would be the question. We have
no, I wouldn't want him to get a ranked fight yet. I want him to kind of slowly build his resume and slowly build his portfolio. You know, one of I just can't remember who the fighter is. I think it was Henry Cejudo, who was talking about how it's important to build your fighter resume and build your experience in the cage, and get familiarity and build your stardom with a good base. You know, the title's not going anywhere, you know, but what fighters need to do is make sure that they hone their skills and improve in the gym so that they can continue to perform the way he did last week. And so I'd want him to get a fight that is challenging, yes, but I'd want him to, you know, continue to just be on a steady stream of dubs that get him eventually to a place where we can talk rankings and we can talk big fights and we can eventually talk titles. So I don't know who it would be. I'd have to think about it a bit more, but I'd like him to fight, a guy who's bubbling under in that top 15 in the division. Just to build a resume and to just steadily go about his business, and continue to make, good strides. Slow and steady wins the race. So that's why I'm going for that in my mind.
Now, everything you said is 100%. He's really used his platform in the right way. And I think one other thing you said there is titles. When talking about titles, and we talked about it earlier as well, South Africa right now is a championship country. We wish the cricketers and the football players did quite well. Bafana, kudos to you guys making semi-finals. Unfortunately, you couldn't get past the Super Eagles, but not your fault. I wouldn't say it was an even match, but yeah.
Another story for another time.
Another story for another time. We didn't talk about the Proteas, but okay.
Yeah.
But talking about South African champions, right now in the MMA space, there are two names that stand out that are over and above the organizations we've talked about. That's versus EFC, ACE, over and above those three. These people are now putting MMA and South Africa on the map. The one we've talked about extensively in the show, Vickers, still knocks Du Plessis. And yes, I love saying still knocks. He's the current UFC champion, middleweight champion. He defeated Sean Strickland 2 weeks ago for the championship, and he's been carrying this title high. Recently landed back in South Africa, phenomenal. Giving back already, as we saw, he's already back in the gym with his title, giving back to those who are coming after him in the form of Ngannou and other fighters. Phenomenal. The other one that a lot of people don't know about is Nkosi, the future Ndebele. Now, he fights out in Brave CF, and he is the current Brave bantamweight champion out of Deep Sloot. He also went back to his school, and he took the title back and said, hey, guys, you can do anything you want if you put your mind to it. Look at me now. Looking at the champions that we have in South Africa, looking at the promotions that we have in South Africa, I don't think there's any other country on the continent, definitely, that has that many MMA promotions. So looking at all of what this cauldron of MMA is in South Africa, where do you think we're going in terms of South Africa where it comes to MMA? And how do you think we can get what I would like to say is to the top of MMA, along with your United States, very specifically because of the UFC?
Look, I think you've mentioned some big names. I'll start off with Drickus again, and obviously we've talked about him quite a bit. But what I loved about how he went about it is, yes, we had the big airport arrival where the first time that the UFC belt touched South African soil. Let me not say African, South African soil. Big moment for South Africa. But not only did he do that, he went on an incredible press run through SuperSport, through the various radio stations, went through to Cape Town for a belt exhibition, and everyone came through there at the V&A Waterfront, supported him very well. SuperSport, the multi-choice building, I think he was there as well. And then he ended off his tour in Pretoria and Menlyn Main, also well supported. I think where I'm going with that is the sports needs exposure. People need to, get over the stigma of, this is a violent sport and there's so much blood, and, I wouldn't want my kid doing that. Because for me, I still believe MMA from a discipline perspective, is there's so much to gain from the sport in terms of just, how you put yourself together as a human being again. I've said this before, how, spiritually, mentally, physically, you just gain so much from the sport. And I think we need that education to go through, and the exposure from Drickus doing all these tours, from Gossi, going back to Deep Sloot and showcasing his belt to his people, is exposing various other avenues for people to explore in terms of, sports. It's not going to be the traditional rugby, soccer, cricket, and there's various other sports. And this sport now is getting the limelight, finally getting that limelight. Yes, because we've got, these guys who are holding these important, belts. And I think we need to use that momentum to filter it through so that MMA becomes, comes out of that stigma that, it's a violent sport. It is a violent sport, we get it, but I think people need to understand the art. It's mixed martial arts. And I think if you approach it in that way, you get a sense of building a human being to do so much more in life, because the skills that you get from the perseverance and what you go through to become a mixed martial artist, those skills are transferable to anything in the world. You could be a marketer, you could be, an architect, you could be, a construction guy, or whatever you can be. Those skills are transferable because it teaches you about yourself. It teaches you to almost play to your strengths, work on your weaknesses, because if you are exposed, you pay the price. You pay a very heavy price. And
One,
and and that's the reason why I really love the sport. And so, to maybe, I know I've taken long because I think it's a passion of mine. Yeah, so I understand I've taken quite a bit to answer your question, but in short, really happy with where the guys are taking the sport, and hopefully it grows from strength to strength and gets into not only just the gyms that are out in South Africa, the couple of gyms that we can name, but hopefully in schools, so that people can understand the sport and actually become something that's in the mainstream.
One other champion we have to mention in all of that is, once again, Demont Pena. He is currently the the flyweight champion out in Aries, out in France, and he defends his title in March. He's also the one who has organized Ace Fighting Championship, and the reason he definitely falls into this category is because he is also working from and out of South Africa. Once again, another international world champion sitting in South Africa, working with fighters in South Africa. It has to be mentioned. But he also did take his craft home. He had an exhibition fight against Rovan de Beer this past December in Luanda, Angola, which was phenomenal. They had an amazing exhibition to basically take MMA back to the Angolan people, to say, here is your world champion. Watch, listen, learn. Let's all get behind him because we have a world champion as well, as much as he's fighting out of South Africa. So it's an absolute melting pot of MMA champions here in South Africa right now, and it's absolutely phenomenal. And I see it being one of the destinations where you have people come to our gyms to train, the same way as people go to American Top Team or Couture, any of those other PIs in the world. They'll start coming here to learn. And for me, that's where it's exciting, because then our fighters learn from international fighters, which then just continues to grow and grow and grow until we just have one amazing, phenomenal, developed MMA industry and community in South Africa. With that said, Lou, thank you so much for your time today. As always, where can people find you? Anyone listening, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe at Headkickpod on all platforms.
My platform is just there. I've kind of put the IG. It's IG, Facebook, and X. I almost said Twitter. Yeah, so that's the handle. That's the public platform where I have all of my expressions, whether it's mixed martial arts, whether it's music, whether it's culture, fashion, and all sorts of things. That's where you can find me, at Monwabisi Legacy. And we can interact. Let's chat. Let's talk about your opinions. Let's see how, what would you like to see? What would you like to talk about? Let's talk and let's grow the sport, man. I'm very keen to have more conversations around MMA with people who love to build themselves.
And just a quick shout out, can't see it back there, but shout out to Fighting Talk Pod. I think when we were speaking about Themba Gorimbo, Chooks from Fighting Talk Pod was actually out in Zimbabwe with Themba to actually go and see all the work that he's been doing out in his home country. So shout out to Fighting Talk Pod. Keep going, keep pushing. Love you in the community. And that's about it from us today. Lou, do you know how we like to end our sessions?
Kick him in the head.
Anyway, you kind of beat me to it on that one. Are you ready?
Well, I think that's the one that I've seen. But is there something? Is there something else?
That's literally it. If you got to end an interview, you got to kick him in the head.
Beautiful. Take care, brother. All the best.
Cheers.
One love.
Kick him in the head.